Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite our seventh speaker, who would talk on Malaysia and regional economy outlook, challenges and opportunities. Can we call Tan Sri Andrew Sheng on a virtual session?
Thank you very much indeed. I'm extremely honored to join this very important conference. And I will not try to repeat what Professor Firdausi has said. I think it would be very interesting to share our similarities and differences. Let me just very quickly go to this. Okay, I think I agree with earlier speakers that Indonesia's capital move to Nusantara has huge geopolitical and economic implications. I agree with the assessment that Indonesia will pump into Kalimantan, which will benefit the whole Borneo states. Now, let me go to the geopolitical, the global side. The World Bank is saying that our growth pre-2008 will be halved in the direction towards 2030. World growth is definitely going to slow because population will peak, and then we have huge climate change issues. But East and Southeast Asia remains the growth zone, but even that will be a little bit slower. The global geopolitical protectionism is very problematic. Okay, there will be more protectionism. There's even potential war, and the shift towards net zero is without funding is very challenging. The world needs $2 to $5 trillion per year annually just to shift towards net zero. And the advanced countries are providing at most 1.5. So whichever states that are able to capture carbon and prove the move towards green inclusive development will be winners. And so business as usual is out, and Borneo states will have to accelerate growth, if only to help Malaysia out of its middle income trap. Since 2008, Malaysia has been in the middle income trap. In ringgit terms, we keep on going up there in high income, but the ringgit depreciates. We still do not seem to be able to break out of that 13,000 per capita issue. And I agree with Firdausi and other speakers. Devolution in diversity, decentralization in diversity, open competitiveness is the only way Malaysia can compete with the rising states in ASEAN. So we need a very holistic change. So let me very quickly now run through these issues. Now, if you look at the Pricewaterhouse 2017 projections to 2050, and I have slightly earlier done a major study for the ADB that are broadly roughly the same. Indonesia will be the fourth largest economy in the world by 2050. By their own admission, 2045, 100 years of independence, population of 309 million, growth rate of 5 to 6%, GDP of 9 to 10 trillion, larger than Japan. Vietnam will double its GDP per capita, and it will probably be 20th position. Philippines, 100 million also, already growing at 6.3%, will be 19th. Thailand will be 25th. Malaysia will be 24th. Okay, but I am not even sure we can get there. I mean, the problems, our growth rate has suffered. Now, if you really look at this climate change impact, which is the latest available, there are three scenarios. One is business as usual. If it is business as usual, if you look at the area where Borneo is, we will be on the suffering side. If we are on the sustainable pathway, we are on the orange side, which we're doing a little bit better. And only when we reach global conservation, are we a little bit better? Now, you have to ask yourselves why. But considering we have one of the largest natural resources in terms of the ocean, marine reefs, and forests, and the answer is it may be due to our growth model. But anyway, by 2030, ASEAN, counted as one country, would be the fourth largest in the world, all right, behind China, US, India, and Japan. But by the way, Japan's position has already been overtaken by Germany because the yen keeps on depreciating. So you can grow in domestic currency, but if your currency depreciates, as ringgit has, you won't break the middle income trap. And that's a big problem, right? Now, Malaysian Madani, is very, 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 very hopeful. But if you look at the 1990 post-financial crisis to today, our growth after the Asian financial crisis has been nearly halved, right? Before 1998, we were growing at 8 to 10%. Now we're lucky to hit 5%. And much of that growth is due to consumption, not investment. Locals are not investing in Malaysia. The foreigners are investing only because they get tax benefits and cheap imported labor. So consumption cannot drive us. And post-COVID, this is a real problem. Now, I read the same document as Professor Firdausi, but I would be a little bit more critical, right? The projection is that we want to grow to 5 to 6%. But in reality, the 12th plan is 4.5 to 5.5. Okay, it's been lifted up, but productivity is still going down, and this is really serious because we're a very young population, right? So we're entering a high global stress cycle with high debt. Federal debt is high. Household debt is amongst the highest amongst emerging markets. Our ringgit continues to weaken, and we have major structural reforms. But the real issue is that we are sliding relative to ASEAN countries, particularly the 100 million plus economies of Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines. They are moving towards the 5 to 7% growth range. Mark my words, by 2030, this is my own assessment, Indonesia will move towards somewhere around 7%. Vietnam could even reach 8 to 9%. Philippines would be 7 to 8%. At that rate of growth, they will overtake us. Their population is 3 times larger. That means Vietnam and Philippines are 3 times larger than Malaysia. If they reach our per capita income, they will be 3 times larger than us, right? Let alone Indonesia. Our major engines of oil and gas, palm oil, and manufacturing all have huge productivity and value-added growth issues, right? We can attract FDI, but the big winners with the US-China problems are Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Indonesia because we face shortages in the key skilled area. We have a very strange policy of importing unskilled cheap labor and exporting all our skilled high-value talent. And there is growing youth unemployment. We cannot rely on cheap foreign labor forever. So this is a chart that you all know. And let me explain this. Our oil and gas, quite a large percentage, I think is way above 50% of the oil and gas is offshore Sabah and Sarawak. And yet, because of the debate, Petronas is not yet extracting more of that, right? Our palm oil is facing, have a very strange situation. Last year was the highest palm oil price ever in history, highest oil price, and yet we did not feel a boom. Why is that? Because the palm oil stock market prices did not grow because the foreign investors say that palm oil kills orangutan, destroys our forests, not green. Therefore, every time the palm oil stock price goes up, the foreigners are selling. Our real areas are tech and tourism, but that depends upon talent. Now, this is a chart from the Industrial Master Plan. If you look at that chart, Malaysian labor productivity actually is not on an upward trend, it's on a downward trend. Singapore is on the way up, Vietnam is on the way up, Thailand has gone up and then started going down. Philippines is neither here or there, but they've got much bigger population and a younger profile. Last year, our subsidy alone was 67 billion, and the minister has just announced it could be 81 billion a year. How much is that relative to our oil and gas income? Last year, our oil and gas exports was 152 billion. So when we're short about, Professor Firdausi was 4 billion, 6 billion, 5 billion, that's kacang putih compared to the petrol subsidy. Can't we use that subsidy to subsidize our long-term development rather than short-term oil usage, which increases more carbon? Our palm oil plantation, you all know, we have reached the limit in Sabah and Sarawak by palm oil, and we gave all our technology to Indonesia. A lot of the palm oil planters in Indonesia are Malaysian. And therefore, where is our value added downstream? Not quite there, right? Our electronic industry is growing well, but the bulk of that is really foreign driven. And it's an area in which we don't receive that much tax because there's a lot of tax benefits given to foreigners coming in. And when they come in, they find there's shortage of labor, they'll be importing foreign labor to boost this. Tourism clearly is the way to go, but how we do this is very critical. I brought some foreigners to Sabah, and we had to go through miles and miles of palm oil in order to see our jungle. They don't want to come, 10,000 miles just to see palm oil. There's no doubt about that, right? And look at our small and medium enterprises. Our small and medium enterprises are very important creators of employment, innovation, not so much exports, but they also have great innovation. And they do not get their fair share of finance, and therefore how we boost the median, middle group of enterprises is very critical to our future growth. So now, because Professor Firdausi and others have already talked about this, let me very quickly run through our opportunities. The chart that struck me hugely in the second Malaysia plan, not the midterm, it was no longer there in the midterm. If you look at the GDP by state 2016 to 2020, Sabah and Sarawak are the top because Sarawak averaged 0.9% and Sabah 1%. The national average was 2.7%. To me, that's a shock. It's a negative shock, all right? How can Sabah and Sarawak, two of the most dynamic states that joined the federation, right, has now reached a state in which we are growing slower than the average? This does not make sense. Now, look at the numbers. Even the midterm review says, okay, we'll go 5 to 6%, Sarawak to go 5.4, Sabah 4.4. When you are the youngest state, the by population, growing fast like Sabah, right? We should be growing faster, not growing slower. This doesn't make sense. Why should Bornean states grow slower than Peninsula? The second question is, why should Malaysia grow slower than Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia? Right? If we don't, something is seriously questionable. So look at the Sabah GDP numbers, right? Professor Firdausi has already shown some of the others. And per capita, Sabah is slightly better than Terengganu, right? Of course, but better than Perlis. That's not what you would want. You would want Sabah, one of the most big states. Sarawak is doing well, but Sarawak potential is even bigger, right? Because Sarawak is one of the largest geographical states in Malaysia, and Sabah, if I'm not wrong, is at least number 2. So the potential for Sabah and Sarawak should be huge. We should not be behind the national average. We should be above. We should be contributing to taking Malaysia out of the middle income trap. That's the major challenge facing Malaysia. Sabah and Sarawak should not be dragging the growth. We should be leading the growth. But look at this number. 8 of the 10 poorest state districts in Malaysia are in Sabah. So you've already talked about that. Now, the point that I really want to make is that considering that we live amongst the largest natural resource, based in Malaysia, plus very young population, plus the fact that there are a lot of energy resources are in Sabah and Sarawak, some offshore, a lot onshore. Can't we be the lab experimentation for growth to meet the ESG standards? Now, everybody talks about it. I am part of, I worked as part of United Nations environmental panel. They all talk, no action, right? The SDG goals to 2030, only 12% in the world has been achieved. If Sabah and Sarawak can pioneer this in Malaysia, Malaysia can be one of the leading states to achieve green, sustainable growth. But it's not about aspiration. It's not about vision. It's about execution. And so less talk, more action, and invest in our young. That is the key things to go. Our share of the education, higher education, and school education in Sabah and Sarawak, in my personal view, that's my personal view, is totally inadequate. We really need to go, up that scale much, much faster. The idea that I have, very, very quickly, is that, we need to develop resilience because, the world is changing very fast. And resilience at the village level, will generate more local food, local jobs, lift up income, community, and climate well-being. Small farms produce up to 5 times more food per acre than industrial monoculture. People, sing praises about palm oil. Yes, but palm oil has its environmental problems on degrading topsoil and its sustainability in the long term. Now, when I was in Bank Negara, I learned one major lesson. Spend money in the rural areas, the urban areas will benefit. If you spend money in the urban areas, London will benefit. That means the money will flow outside. So to a large extent, we really need to be much more helpful to the local economy, push local, development, more roads, more energy, self-sustaining energy, more food creation, right? Develop health, very much like, what the Norwegians have done. The simple act of community gardening created twice as much effectiveness in treating depression as chemical antidepressants, right? We need to create well-being much faster and much better. So to very quickly conclude, the Bornean states have many opportunities in the digital age. Once we bring the electricity to the rural areas, we can bring the internet through, the satellites. And time, and tide is on our side, but not national unity. So the diversity and unity is key to our mindset and systemic change. Now, this is what the Indonesians, our neighbor, has understood. They are shifting the capital out from Jakarta, which is sinking under climate warming and rising seas, to Nusantara. That can only benefit the whole of Borneo. And because, of Sabah, Sarawak, and Brunei are very much energy surplus and can be very large carbon sinks, we can be a growth zone. Now, the East Asia, ASEAN, and South Asia are global growth zones. But who is going to pioneer the laboratory for that change? My argument is Sabah, Sarawak can do this. Because we have the knowledge base to do this, we can tap this globally. But we can only do this with human talent. And therefore, we must invest in our human capital. There is an old saying, it takes 10 years to grow a tree, 100 years to grow human talent. We have already spent, 60 years since independence. How much human talent have we lost? And how much talent should we be growing? That is the key question we need to ask ourselves and build our future. Because, just tapping the resources is less important than welcoming the whole of the people in East Asia who do not have our natural beauty, our human cultural diversity, and our geographical location. So our ecotourism, as we showed through during the COVID, local tourism kept us alive, and foreign tourism, created the growth, whereas it will take some time before the oil and gas, palm oil, etc., trickle down to the domestic economy. Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak can be the lab for change, but that change is a mindset change. Until we understand very clearly, as Professor Firdausi said, federalism is actually about devolution and decentralization. It can only grow when the center gives the resources to the federated states to grow faster. Now, there will be differences, and that we all understand. But with our resources and our talent, we should be growing faster than the national average, not slower. On that note, thank you very much, and be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Tan Sri Andrew.